Do we need to click guided when it pops up?
No, I'll do that.
Okay.
You're listening to the new WCEG Network on WCEG Talk Radio. Click your live stream tab. Watch us on live on your smart television, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I'm your host for the next hour. My name is Damita Chatman. Some people call me the Queen. Some people call me the Watchdog, but I'm just Damita Chatman. Where we speak life into the community, we empower life. Subscribe us free on your YouTube television, WCG Network. Like us, follow us on, or connect us with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Your platforms you can download on your mobile, smartphone, Apple television, iPads, Apple Store. The last thing, this is the disclaimer. Anything that's said today is the viewers, host, the guest, and not the producer. I want to thank Representative Roger Bruce today, and I want to thank Camilla Moore Johnson for coming out. I'm excited because we have not really seen her since we created the city of South Fulton. So I want to thank my guests. I'm gonna give Camilla, give me 1 minute to introduce you, and then we go to Representative Roger Bruce.
Okay. Or you want me to do it?
Yeah, yes.
Hi. Oh, I'm Camilla Moore. Many of you probably remember me from Cityhood. So it's a pleasure. Thank you, Ms. Chatman, for having me on board. And hopefully I can leave your listening audience with information and possibly some information that allows them to ask certain questions as it relates to our current city government. So most of my experience has been in government, 40 plus something years. I've done county and city management. So, hopefully by the end of the day, citizens who have questions in terms of how the city should operate, some basic questions that need some basic answers, hopefully I can provide those answers for them today, in addition to some questions that I've gotten. So I'm excited.
Thank you so much. Representative Roger Bruce.
Hi there, this is State Rep Roger Bruce. I represent District 61, which is South Fulton County, Douglas County, and a little piece of Atlanta. And I was very involved, as you know, in the creation of this city, and at least giving you the opportunity to decide whether you wanted the city. You decided that you wanted it. And but we had to go through a process to give you that opportunity to make that decision. I want to be real clear. We, Camilla and I and some others, it wasn't just the two of us, there's a whole bunch of people that got involved in this thing. And, but we, our role was to give you an opportunity to decide that you wanted it. It was up to you to decide who you wanted to lead it. And in some instances, we make good decisions, some instances, not so good decisions. But the reality is that we have our city now. And we have to decide what it is that we're going to do to make this city the great opportunity that we saw 5 years ago when we put this together. Our city has the potential to do some things that no other city has the potential to do. With the land mass that we have, vacant land that we have, the intelligence that we have, the financial resources that we have the ability to pretty much do whatever the heck we want to do. We just have to make up our mind to do it.
All right. Thank you, Representative Roger Bruce. Today, we're going to be talking about the city of South Fulton. As everybody knows, city of South Fulton is a hot topic. Some people don't understand that we are ran by a charter city manager, ran form of government. And so we're going to ask some questions. And the first question that I got, and I'm going to go with Camilla first. How did you guys decide on when we were becoming a city, fighting for cityhood? Did you have any involvement in who was running for these offices, Camilla?
No, I did not. However, I'll be upfront. If I could have had all positions from people who had actually worked on the cityhood movement, I wish, or I was pulling for anyone that worked for cityhood to be elected. But in terms of personally, no.
Okay, thank you. Roger, what about you?
No, I intentionally, and I think all of us as a group intentionally decided that that wasn't our role. Our role was to give you the opportunity to have a city, and it was up to you as citizens to decide who you wanted to run it.
Thank you. Now, before one of the questions, Roger, I want to ask, we've seen signs pop up saying they want to de-annex us and put us into Atlanta. Could you do that, Roger? Could we do that?
It's very unlikely that something like that would happen. That's the same thing that they're trying to do in Buckhead, and you see where that's going. And the reality is that we are a city and we need to make the best of it, bottom line.
Thank you.
And Ms. Chairman, if I could weigh in, there is a process that deals with annexations and de-annexations. The city where the residents live would have to agree, and the city receiving them would have to agree. And I don't know, except for one city in the state of Georgia that actually agreed to allow their tax base and revenues to go into another area. But if the city in which they reside don't agree, nothing is going to happen. Because constitutionally and legally, a city has the right to have oversight of any property or tax base that's within their jurisdiction. And so it's a thought, it's an idea, but the likelihood, like Representative Bruce said, is highly unlikely.
Okay, let me ask you a question. If you guys remember, when,
at 844.
you turn that off, you posted. That's okay. You remember when Guilford Forest annexed into Atlanta, and then some of the people did not want to be in Atlanta, but they couldn't get out because they needed 100% of the residents. Is that the same go for the city, Roger?
Pretty much, yeah. You know, again, the difference is when you have a unincorporated area trying to go into a city, that's different than taking an incorporated area and trying to move it into another city. Two different processes. And as was mentioned, like the likelihood of that happening is slim and none. The reality is that there were a group of people that wanted to go into Atlanta, and there was a process that they did not follow. And, you know, we were going through all of this. And when they didn't follow that process, they ended up in the city of South Fulton. And that's just the way it happened. Okay. And it's some of those individuals that are trying now to do what you just talked about.
And it's funny, Mrs. Moore, she's not as tuned in as we are, but it's kind of funny, don't you think, Camilla, that the same people that helped us become and work with the cityhood movement, now they're some of the same people is trying to get away from it.
You know what? It's really disheartening. And I wonder sometimes if our community really understand the importance of staying engaged with your government. If you don't like it, change the people that are there. But, you know, there was a lot of time and energy vested in us becoming a city. You know, when you have over 5,000 people that were on the ground knocking on doors, and as you said, some of these people who now want to de-annex, you know, we're way past that. So if it's something that you don't like, you always have an opportunity to change it. I would say running away is not the answer. You never want to go from the frying pan into the fire, but you got to stick with what we've got, and you've got to work on improving what we've got. And there's a number of ways to do that, but you just need to stay engaged.
Okay. And one other thing real quick, though, let's be clear. When we say there are people who are trying to do this, we're not talking about a lot of people. Some of these people are just very active on the internet, and the internet, as you know, can make one person look like 10 people. Yeah. And so we're not talking about a lot of people. It's not a mass movement to de-annex out of the city of South Fulton.
Yeah, we call them keyboard bullies. That's what I call them. Let me ask you a question, Camilla. I know that we had talked a couple weeks ago, and you were saying how people was reaching out to you with some concerns. Could you kind of tell me and Roger, what were some of those concerns that people was reaching out?
Right. I guess maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago, because I actually did call Roger because we wanted to talk about how we could be of assistance to people that were calling out. And, basically, I think Roger and I both say that once the citizens elected their representatives, we chose to step back and give them an opportunity to do a successful job. But it appears that success rate and what many of the citizens are having heartburn about is that there are some things that they consider to be concerns and they want answers to. So some of the questions that I got was, what type of agenda is it? Is it a mayor council agenda or is it a city manager's agenda? It is a city manager's form of government, which means that any agenda that goes before mayor and council, any meeting that is had, is up to the city manager to bring that agenda. It's his. And he incorporates those items that the elected body wants to have a chance to speak about and vote on. But it is a city manager's agenda.
Can I stop you right there? So
Right.
you telling me, I'm just speaking, and Roger probably can jump in. All these meetings that we have had, when they go into the agenda, and sometime it might be over 100 items on that agenda, which is too long of agenda. You're telling me that the city manager controls that? Because it looks like our mayor controls that. So could you explain that?
Right. What I mean by is that the agenda, the piece of paper, the items on the table that the mayor and council are to consider. Remember, the city manager is really the one who oversees the day-to-day activities, right? It's not the elected officials. And so it is up to he or she to come before mayor and council and says, as a city manager, these are the things that we need to do in the city. Here are the items, need for you to consider them. If there's policy that needs to be made, the city manager needs to recommend that. But it is a city manager's form of agenda. And the other thing, I'm told that the meetings are way too long. I don't even know why they don't go to a consent agenda, right? Most cities, they have a consent agenda, and those items that they can agree on in a work session in which they don't feel that there's any need for deliberation on that item, it needs to go to a consent. And to be honest with you, councils that work together very well, a lot of those items will be on their consent agenda that they just adopt, and then they move on to items that they need to discuss. Now, if there's a controversial item on that consent agenda, they can always pull that item off and then adopt the rest. But there's no need for any council meeting to go as long as people are saying they're going. That means that they're not using a consent agenda, either not using it at all or not using it in the proper way.
Okay, what you got to say about that, Roger?
She's right. I think part of the issue that we had is, we created a city and only one person that got elected had a background in government. Everybody else was brand new to an elected position, brand new to a city council. None of them had held position before. So they were trying to learn as they went.
You better not say that, Roger, because you got some say that they know, but come on.
Well, but that's a reality. I'm not saying anything that's not a fact.
You're right. I agree with you.
The fact is they did not have the background. And so it took a while, but this is just like anything else. When you have a brand new, child, they're going to make mistakes and you're going to have to learn from those mistakes. Right. And it's going to take them a minute to learn how to walk. So,
right.
But Roger, what I will say is that we left a roadmap as a transition team of a lot of things that should have been done, right? I mean, you can accept certain elements of that roadmap, or you can kind of throw it in the garbage, right? If people elect to have a city, they want a well-run city. One of the things when people call me about, what should they be looking for in a city manager? I think, Roger, I told you from day one, no city should necessarily, particularly this size, once we found out what our total population is, should never hire a city manager who has never managed more than 100,000 people, that have never had oversight of a budget that's over 90 million. because you're going to need someone like that that can come in and hit the ground running and make things happen. So more than likely, your city manager will not be someone in Georgia. It's probably going to be someone from an urban center out of either California, Texas, New York, or some other places. But, you know, a lot of the issues that I think I've observed or I've heard about, you know, since we've been incorporated, you know, for the 6 years, is a leadership issue from every level. But until we get a city manager with the qualifications to manage this city, who's managed large cities in the past, who clearly understand his relationship with the elected body, we're going to continue to have problems. You know, people say, I had somebody call me and say, you know, why does council deal with department heads? You know, why are they talking to department heads? That's a violation of the charter, right? We're a city manager form of government. No elected official should have any conversation with any staff, but they should go through the city manager. That's the role of the city manager. And if they violate that, the mayor and council needs to set up some sanctions for themselves. If they are doing things which violate the charter, what actions do they put in place to check themselves? If you know you should not be having a conversation with a staff person, you violate the charter, then you should answer or have to deal with some type of sanction. But they have to be willing to sanction themselves for what I call misbehavior, right? I mean, if you don't have anything to check yourself, you can become a renegade. But they need to put something in place to make sure that the charter and the functions of government as structured, that they are allowed to operate the way that they were made to operate. You know, I was told, don't know for sure, but, you know, the city of South Fulton has the highest turnover of employees than anybody else. You know, they talk about the number of HR directors we've had, the number of planning directors we've had, and all in various areas of terms of city staffing that we have a high turnover. Well, typically, and there's data out there to support this, if you have a high turnover of employees, some aspect of government is dysfunctional. And so, but if you have a strong city manager and a city manager form of government, those type of turnovers are not going to occur because one, staff is not going to be dealing with elected officials, so they're protected. And the city manager is going to make sure that any issues regarding his staff are going to go through him.
I hear your phone, Roger.
Yeah, I don't know. That's the house phone.
Take it off the hook and throw it in the closet. That's where I put mine at. Let me ask you, Roger, do you agree with Mrs. Moore, what she just said?
With regard to it being a city manager form of government, yeah, that's what it is. The whole idea behind it is that you as an elected official are supposed to make policy and go home. And unfortunately, that's not what's happening. And, you know, I hear her say that they need to put things in check to check themselves, in place to check themselves. But I don't know that they understand, you know, as a group, what the exact role is. That, you know, people are still learning, but they're supposed to make policy and go home.
Yeah,
and that's it.
And let me make this clear. We're not here to beat up on our city council, so I don't want nobody to get in their feelings today. This is basically some information that people need to hear, want to hear, to get some understanding about our charter and how our city is ran. And I understand that we'll be 6 years coming up. We've still got some growing pains. And I believe if you two agreed, we're going to be all right. But we're going to have to come together collectively. And again, like Roger say and Camilla say, it starts with leadership. And if the head ain't right, you know the tail ain't gonna be right. Let me ask you some, Roger, about the charter, because people had said that the charter keep getting changed to help the council members. Is that true?
No, it's not being changed to help the council members. It's being changed to help the city. And if you look at you know, what happens in the General Assembly, every single day that we're there, somebody brings something to us changing the city charter somewhere in the state. And some of these cities are old, you know, hundreds of years old, and they're still changing their charter. Some of them change the entire charter. They throw out one and put in another. You know, and it comes because you've learned. When we created the city, we knew that we weren't going to get everything right. We knew it.
Right.
And that's why we created the form of government that we created, so that we would have an opportunity to learn from the mistakes and to be able to fix those things that needed to be fixed. And again, to your point a moment ago, nobody's here trying to criticize the city, especially the current council. The current council is doing much better than what has gone in the past. And I want to congratulate all of them. They are pretty much working together. You know, so we're not talking about the council as it exists. We're talking just in general about how any council with this form of government should be. We're not specifically talking about this council.
Well,
Right.
this is what I will say to that point, Roger. While it may not deal with any specific council person, if the questions and the concerns that are coming forth are true, then the council needs to take note of that, whether it's this group today or a group tomorrow, right? No, I mean, the reason why you have a city manager government is because you hire professionals to do a job. And if they let professionals do their job, then they're able to make policy and go home, right? It's easy to work together if all you're doing is making policy. And if you have the professional staff, because most policy needs some form of expertise in order to say this is how the policy should look. When you have a professional staff and you have their staff recommendations in the policy, everybody should get along, right? I mean, that should be simple. If you follow the structure and the protocols that are in place as it relates to a chartered city under city manager form of government, what happens is that I don't care whether you've been there 4 years, 5 years, or 20, if you start going into the business beyond your city manager, you're not going to get along because staff are going to end up being pit against each other. So, you know, I just hope that this group or the future group to come, really understands the importance of that charter. They adhere to it. And when they violate it, they put sanctions in place to deal with the violators.
Now, let me ask you a question, because I keep hearing you saying, guys saying policies and procedures. And I often say, the only thing the council is to do is to set policies and procedures, and that's it. They don't need to be into the city managers or the developers. And then I often get, no, we have to do more than set policies and procedures. So could you and Roger, that's what you and Roger are saying, policies and procedure, is that correct?
That's correct. Again, when you go to the charter, because I made sure that I read it last night, and most city charters are the same, there's a clear delineation between the elected body and the professional staff. And again, under no circumstances, unless the city manager says it's okay, should any elected official be in any department. That's why you have a city manager. If you have a problem with your public works director because your citizens are complaining that something that he's not doing, you need to hold your city manager accountable, who in turn hold the public works guy accountable, or she. But under no circumstances should they be dealing with the staff. And then another question that you hit on, somebody asked me, well, should council people, one caller said, you know, there's a development coming into my community, and I always see my elected official with the developer. You know what? Bad idea, right? I tell all elected officials, the reason why the state law requires that planning be one of the areas that you offer as a city is because of the impact that planning and economic development has on any community. And when you start dealing with developers, there's an ethics law at the state that basically says that if an elected official somehow crosses the line where he or she involvement with the developer gives the appearance of a kickback, gives the appearance of a favor, that could either be a felony or that could be an ethical charge. So if you got a planning staff, if you have a developer, I used to tell people professionally, I would never let a developer talk to my elected officials. And I would tell my elected officials, do not talk to developers because they will lie. And then you would end up in an orange jumpsuit, right? Go to your city manager, go to your planning staff, let that developer talk to that planner, talk to that director, have those discussions with the city manager, and then let the city manager present that information to mayor and council. And basically said, this is the concept view that came in from this developer, staff has looked at it, here are the pros and cons. What do you think? Because, a rezoning is going to be coming in soon. A developer and dealing with the developer will get you locked up. And as a matter of fact, if you go to the Georgia website, you will see the number of elected officials that already have been indicted or going to be indicted simply because they were out there in the development community. So does that mean that an elected official should not be concerned about development that is coming in the area? Oh, sure, they should be. But the point is, if you have a developer coming, it is your staff who should work with you as an elected official to establish that meeting that allows the developer to come in and allows your planning staff to oversee that meeting. And you as an elected official, you sit there and answer questions that the community has for you. But under no circumstances should you, as or any elected official, should be having conversations with developers. Because typically, if a developer is contacting you, two things are at issue. One, he doesn't like your land use, and he doesn't like your comp plan. So therefore, he wants to talk to you about doing something different than what the law allows him to do at this point. Because otherwise, he can just go get a permit and start building. So they want to change your mind.
And I agree with you 100%. Roger, you want to weigh in on that? Because I have been, and I even have pictures with residents has sent me where elected officials is meeting with the developers. So I hope they hear this, get on one accord, and just let your city manager handle it, because I would not want none of my elected officials to be in an orange jumpsuit. I say that all the time. You're going to end up in an orange jumpsuit. Do you agree with that, Roger, that Ms. Moore just said?
You and I both look like we like blue, not orange. And and I have absolutely no desire to see any of my friends and colleagues in jail. And but if you look back, history will paint the picture for you. Just go back to when when the Fulton County Commission went from 3 to 7 members, and just look at each year for the first 8 to 10 years, a whole bunch of people went to jail. I think it was like almost a joke, where, okay, we got new 7 members, which ones are going to last 7 years, which ones are going to the orange jumpsuit. But it's an error that people make, but it's an error that if you make it, you're going to pay for it. Somebody's going to complain, and somebody's going to get you locked up.
And they're going to lie, right? And for everybody, the GBI and the FBI does do things, right? They will send people. I've seen them send developers who are not real developers. I've seen them send all type of people in development to deal with elected officials. And it's a sting because somebody has reported some suspicion about your involvement with a developer, and they will send you a fake developer, right? Get the information and indict you.
Oh my, you just scared me. And I'm not even in office. Let me ask you a question. People typically say that, I'm just going to use Cliftondales because you live in the Cliftondales area. Roger living in Sandtown. This overlay, wasn't that overlay put in place for a reason?
I mean, from a planning perspective, of course, right? I mean, again, the state mandates every municipality has a zoning ordinance, a comp plan, and that designate land use, right? And this goes through a process. I mean, a lot of times this is an 8-month to a 12-month process, and it is adopted. So after you adopt a land use that has an overlay, why are you changing it? I mean, those discussions about a change should have occurred on the front end. And someone said, well, what if an overlay issue or zoning issue staff recommends it and the planning commission goes against it. Well, it sounds like you need to get a new planning commission, the whole board, because you know why? Staff are professional. They're the ones who wrote your comp plan. They're the ones who wrote your zoning ordinance, right? Typically, when they have a recommendation, it is to be consistent with what they've produced and mayor and council has approved. If your planning commission decides that they don't like it, are they correct by going against their own land use and their own zoning ordinance? They should not. You know, I have served as an expert witness as it relates to zoning cases and whether or not the suit was viable because of a violation of your comp plan and your land use. It happens all the time. You don't have lawsuits if you stick to what you approve based on what the citizens agreed to. But when you start changing it for whatever reasons, you're going to find yourself in a lawsuit. So to your point, if the overlay district was approved, Ms. Chatman, by the public, and it is an official document, why are you changing it now? Or why are you going to change it at any point until your next update?
Roger, you want to weigh in?
I mean, there's nothing else to be said. She was very clear with it.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. People be saying, and it's a concern that I have, anything that fell under, like some of these subdivisions that was built in 2000, anything that was supposed to take place, like your road pavement, now it's an issue with your road pavement. They're not paving, and I'm going to use my subdivision for a prime. When we build in here, the developer put up bonds for our roads. Then he went under bankruptcy, so the roads was not had that second pavement where you had drains up. So now you got potholes and everything. So now what they want to do, they want to come in and they want to repave some of the subdivision, but not have all the subdivision. I say that's just like putting a Band-Aid on it, because when you do have, about time you go to fix the new, the new is no good. Why can't you just go in there and repave that whole subdivisions? And I might get over in Rogers area, District 1, just about every subdivision in District 1 has been repaved with every street. But when it come down to District 2 or the other districts where we're going to pave certain streets, we're going to pave half of the streets. And then you have some subdivisions that is newer than the one I'm in, and their whole subdivision has been paved, and I just don't understand that. So could you guys help me out, Roger, Camilla?
Well, let me just say this. Someone called and said they went over in Rogers area and the streets were paved. I'm going to say this again. If the city is transparent and they do things in the manner in which they should be done, you won't have this issue. Almost every city that I know has a street paving log. And basically, they do an analysis of every road and every street within every subdivision in the entire city of South Fulton. That evaluation is going to rank roads and streets and internal streets of subdivisions with a paving number that basically says this street is the worst, these streets are next, these streets are in pretty good shape. That list should be made public to taxpayers, because that list of projects is supposed to go before mayor and council that has a street improvement list. I don't know anybody that's hazily decide, I'm going to pave, my roads and my subdivisions. That's not how that works, because as a taxpayer, if roads were paved in District 1, they would still pay with my taxes, right? So there should be transparency in terms of, one, what does the street paving list look like, the rating of those streets, and the schedule of when those streets are going to be paved or resurfaced, is what we call them. You got resurfacing and then you've got paving. And that list should be on the website. So if I want to go to find out when my internal subdivision streets are going to be resurfaced or repaved, I should be able to go to the website, find my subdivision, and see, will it happen this year? Will it happen next year? Or will it happen 3 years from now? And that list needs to be adhered to because a policy regarding how monies are going to be spent on repaving and resurfacing has been adopted. That goes up for 5 years. So, it's unfortunate that you had to call and say, or someone had to call and say, our streets are so bad. Where is the rating for your subdivision? Where is council action that looked at the rating for your subdivision in terms of those streets being resurfaced? And did the public see it? Do they know when their streets are going to be repaved? I mean, again, that's just from a government operations based on a city manager form of government. That information should be on the website.
Before we run out of time, can we talk a little bit about things that we should be doing going forward?
Absolutely. We gonna get there. We finna get there now.
Okay.
Let's go. How can we move forward?
Based on the calls that I've gotten, I think mayor and council needs additional training beyond anything that GMA can offer. They really need someone to come in, whoever that is, to sit with them and help them revamp this thing, put things in place for policies that check them, that deals with your organizational structure, and make sure that the professional leadership for the next 3 or 4 years is what it should be, that the department heads that the city manager hires or have in place are professionals with the skill sets they should have. And 3, transparency going forward. 4, everything that I need to know about the city of South Fulton going forward, Roger, I should find on the website. Any question, if there's a procurement question, I mean, I'm hearing that there's issues about, I guess, an RFP about waste, but under procurement, I should be able to go to the website and basically see who all bid it once mayor and council has decided on that bid list. So going forward, we just have to be more transparent. My website, the city website, should be a one-stop shop. Anything that I need to know about my government, I tried to find a budget book. I couldn't find one. Right? I mean, a lot of these questions that people have, they might not have if the information was available. And so, Roger, what I would suggest is 1, nobody knows everything, but if the comments that I've gotten in regards to some of the problems that exist, they need to bring in somebody professionally to help them. That's number 1. 2, going forward, they need to make sure that the city manager who actually leads this ship has the proper skill sets and the experience of managing a city our size, the money that we have, the number of employees that we have, and to make sure that that city manager protects his staff and is effective as he or she relates to the elected officials.
Do you agree with that?
Because if we don't, I don't know if people remember what happened in Lithonia. But if your government gets to a point where certain things go awry, the governor can come in and he can send everybody home in an appointed panel to oversee what you do. So we don't want to get to that critical state. No. I think there's an opportunity for our city to move forward. I just think that the elected officials, and again, I haven't talked to them, so I really don't know. And I try not to know. I'm just going based off the calls and the comments that I've gotten. It's going to take a rehaul, Roger, or overhaul, right? It's not a hard task. It's just because the people that are there, they lacked a real city manager who could have helped them, which forced them to do things that they should not have done or should be doing because they had a weak city manager. And so I think that once they get that strong city manager going forward, a lot of these issues that we know or think exist will probably be solved.
And we got some hard workers. Roger, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I think all that she said is absolutely correct. But in addition to those things, we also have to educate the public. We have to educate the public as to what our form of government is, how that
Yes.
form of government operates, so that they're not expecting things from their elected officials that they should be expecting from their city manager. And I think that's part of it. Elected people, you know, and I've been in elective office, as you know, for a long time. You know, we respond to our constituents, and if our constituents are calling us with demands and things, you know, about what they want, we have to educate them. You know, what the role is, and that if we step outside that role, that we're actually interfering with the growth and progress of the city, because they don't know. And the other piece of it too, I think, and I think this is okay, is that the elected officials should be holding community meetings. They should be talking to people and getting input from them about where they want to see their city going. And you know, right now, I don't know that we've defined what we want this city to be. You know, we hear about New York, you know, and what that city wants to be. You know, we hear about Chicago and what that city wants to be. I'm not sure that we've defined what we want this city to be yet. Even Atlanta, you know, we've defined city too busy to hate, you know, is one of the things that they came up with. You know, city, you know, where you easy to do business and all kinds of things. You know, we have to define what we want the city of South Fulton to be. And we are, as I said at the beginning of this conversation, we are in a unique situation in that, you know, we have different areas of this city. We're spread out enough where we can be more than one thing. And in one area, we can be, we could be a place where we grow things and build things. Another place we have warehouses where we can store things and ship things. Other places we have recreation where we can go and recreate, you know, so we can define, you know, what this city in its totality is going to be, but we can also break it down into smaller parts and decide what parts are going to be. And I think the key to it is that we have to stop looking at the city as 7 different small cities, because that's not what it is.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think that's an error, you know, that we are looking at it that way. And we have to look at our city as as a whole, and how we want to work it.
And Roger, just to echo what you said, you know, the first, if an elected official is getting a call from a citizens, the city manager and department head has failed. A citizen really should not have to call an elected official about a problem if you got department heads and a city manager, right? And Roger, basically what you were saying is that the elected officials need to be the visionaries. You know, if they spend time on the vision for the city based on the suggestions that they've gotten from all of the citizens, then you can shape the vision. And once the vision has, and I'm saying do the vision and not in operations, right? But if you do the vision correctly, then that gives everybody hope. And then your city manager and your staff is their responsibility to implement the vision, right? And so I totally agree with what you're saying, that, you know, elected officials should be, as the policymakers, they should also be the visionaries. And I think there's a lot for them to do. And I think if they do that well and put the other pieces in place, I think our city will thrive.
Yeah, we had the vision to create a financial situation where they can't spend more money than they take in. So the city is not, you know, I keep hearing stuff about the city going in debt and all that. So we're not in debt. The city's, the city's not in debt. The city cannot spend more money than it takes in. And, you know, are they spending all the money on things that we should be spending on? You know, that's up to, you know, different people's opinion. But I think that if we look at what we're spending money on, I would spend some of it on something else. But again, I'm not on the city council, so I'm not sure what's in their head. But the reality is that we need to, if we have a picture or a vision, as Camilla said, then we would know what we should be spending money on,
Let
because
me ask you,
it should be going towards that vision.
let me ask you a question, Roger. You just said something. Shouldn't it be a place where on the website where this vision should be? Shouldn't we have a place somewhere on our website, Camilla, where if you're putting a Starbucks in District 1, residents can go on a website and say a Starbucks is coming to District 1, one is coming to District 2. Shouldn't we have something like that in place? We know
Absolutely. I mean, what my staff has done in the past, and what a lot of cities do, is that you go to the website and there's information that you're going to find on the development website. It's going to tell you the zoning, it's going to tell you the developer, and it's going to tell you the style of development, whether it's commercial, and then it's going to give it a name. It's going to say Starbucks is coming in, here's the address location, and the phase in which that development is going. It has an LDP, or it has permits to start building. But most governments, or those that I've worked in, actually have a tab called development. And when you go there, you will know every single entity of any type that has one, because businesses that get a permit or many times already have the zoning in place. But if Starbucks is coming in a commercial area that already has the zoning, then it needs to be on the website. If a drugstore is coming in, again, anything that pertains to anything that's coming in, I should be able to go to the development website, that tab, and see every new business that has been permitted, every new business or land use that is coming in based on the zoning, what it looks like, and particularly if there's a name attached to it. It should be the one-stop shop. And Roger, to your point, until the website reflects a lot of this information, then people are going to always have the comments that you said, right? If your website under the finance division tells you, there's not a budget book up there, by the way, but it tells you and recaps major expenditures over a certain point, I don't need to go to a council meeting because I can go to the website and find it. All information belongs to the taxpayers. There's nothing secretive or should be secretive about anything you do. So therefore, put it on the website so that John Doe, no matter whether or not his street is going to be paved, who is the trash hauler going to be, whatever, under those department tabs, I should be able to find anything that I'm looking for.
Okay. Let me ask you a question, Roger, because you're down at the state level and it's a county issue. And we talked about this with Commissioner Pitts, so it's nothing that I'm saying they're going to put him on blast. He talked about putting a senior center on Stonewall Tail. Do you think it's time for South Fulton to have its own senior center somewhere in South Fulton? Do you think it's time for that?
Absolutely. It's not only for a senior facility. I look at, our city. We have a large population, over 100,000 people, and we have all age groups in the city of South Fulton. What we need is the ability for somebody to be born in the city of South Fulton, if they and live their entire life in the city of South Fulton, if they choose to do so, and have housing opportunities that they can shift to as they go through life. At birth, they're born and they're living with their mom and daddy, but when they get to be my age, you might need a senior citizen facility. And I don't want to have to leave, if I choose to leave, that's fine, but I don't want to have to leave my city because my age changed.
Absolutely.
And, so you should have all the opportunities. And not only that, we have to have different housing opportunities. I look at right now, most of our housing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is single family homes. And single family homes, they're great. I love having my single family home, but you got to have a variety. You got to have, housing that if I want my grandmama to live with me or others to live in the same area with me or close to me, you got to have different options. If I want my kids to be able to be away from me but close enough to me, they need their housing and the things that go along with it. The things that my 25 and 30-year-old kids want to do, I may not want to do those things, but those things should still be available in the city of South Fulton for them.
Right.
Well, and I will say that, my last view of our land use and comp plan actually allows that, Roger, because the state and the national, pretty much asks all communities to have different type of housing and housing stocks for every segment of the community. And I think, the last time I looked at the plan, we do offer that. The question, though, is whether or not developers, a developer is about making money. And so if he sees that he can make money by building apartments in accordance with the land use along major corridors where apartments will work, if he sees that he's going to profit it, it will be built, because developers are about money. It's not that they love your community. It's about a profit. It's a profit-making endeavor. And so, we do have that every choice, including the land use. It's just based on whether or not a developer wants to come in, based on where they're allowed to be built, and whether or
Let
not
me ask you a question. Sorry to cut you off, Camilla. Thank you. Because we're down not at 8 minutes, but let me ask you a question, and this is a quick. What will it take for South Fulton, Roger, to consider a hospital on this side of town? And reason I asked, I was on another side of a town, and when I saw that impact of people, and the people were saying they were from Union City, South Fulton, and the look on them folks' face, because they weren't used to this in their emergency, what would it take for the state and the folks to get us a hospital open back up on the south side?
Okay, let's make sure we educate folks. Most hospitals in this state are privately owned. They're not government-owned hospitals, including Grady. Right. Everybody thinks Grady is a government hospital. It is not. It is a privately owned hospital with its own board, and when we have a contract with Grady to provide services to Fulton County residents, but it's private. And what you end up with is, if we create an environment where a person or a group cannot make a profit off of their investment, they're not going to come. Grady gets subsidized by Fulton County and DeKalb County. And if we are going to put a hospital in South Fulton, in order for that hospital to be profitable, so to speak, we're going to have to agree to subsidize it, more than likely. To my knowledge, and Camilla, you were in city government more than I was, I don't know of any city that subsidizes a hospital.
They don't, because municipal budgets, or even included ours, cannot sustain a hospital, right? So, no.
Okay, I just want to clear.
Was I off in what I said?
No, you were correct. Absolutely, 100% correct.
I just want to, because that was a question, and people, I understand, that, but some people don't understand that. We're coming down to the last, and I can sit here all day and talk to you and Roger. I'm going to get you back after the summer, and we're going to continue our conversation. In closing, before I want to thank you guys for coming. Your last closing minutes. I want to thank you guys for coming. I hope the information that was said today will clear up some of the stuff. It's great information. So Camilla Moore, in your closing statement.
This is for the 5,000 workers who worked on the People's Campaign and the majority of the voters who voted for the city. You still have a voice. You don't like what you're seeing, step up to the plate and make some changes and demand some changes. Your government, the people are at the top of the ballot. We're everybody's bosses. So we're going to stay encouraged, but I encourage you to stay involved. and then we will have a bright future if we do the things that we should do them correctly, and be a transparent government.
Thank you. Roger?
Yeah, two things. I think one of the things that we should, focus on going forward is making sure, as I said, that people are educated, that citizens are educated about how the city should be operating. And our elected officials, all of them, including myself, have to be willing to educate. And if somebody comes to you with an idea and that idea is not practical based on the form of government we have, you got to have the courage to just explain that to them and tell them we can't do that, and here's why we can't do it. But if you have some other idea that we can do, let's talk about it. And we just got to be willing to educate people. And I try to do that. As you know, one of the things that I've been pushing, and I continue to push, is that we have a city. We talk about Starbucks coming here. We talk about other name brands coming here, but we also have to talk about local businesses as well. We could have a Damita sandwich shop or a Damita coffee shop. Or all I'm saying is that we've got to do things to promote the idea of us owning the businesses in our community.
Absolutely.
And you've heard me give the idea about toilet paper before.
Yeah.
If we started producing our own toilet paper, we got 100,000 people who I hope use it every day.
Oh yeah.
And that's a good business, but let's start businesses of our own and promoting businesses of our own.
Absolutely. In closing, I want to thank you guys, but my takeaway is we in this together, and our city's going to be all right. I'm going to always voice my opinion, but our city's going to be all right. Roger, thank you. And you know what? I just had an old lady, mind just went blank because I was just finna say something, Roger, to you, senior moment to you and Camilla. Why don't you said something? Maybe we ought to start educating our communities. And let me say this, the majority of the people that was around during the cityhood movement is educated. It's the new homeowners that's coming in that the people are feeding them misinformation. I believe communication is powerful. Roger, I want to thank you. Thank you. It just come back. Before we close, I got 2 minutes. I want to say that I did send out email for another elected official to be on the show, and they did not respond. So I want that to say. You got closing remarks. You want to say something?
I just want the citizens to know that Roger, myself, and the transition team is always available. Roger's background is HR, right? Mine is city management and county government. The transition team have a lot of skill sets. I mean, we were the ones who set up the city to hand it over. And I know there are people who have heartburns about us. I understand it. But again, the transition team is available to help this current mayor and council work through some things if they call us.
Thank you. Roger?
Yeah, can I use this as an opportunity to invite people to our Family Fun Day?
Yes, you can.
All right. Every year for the last 20 years, we've had our Family Fun Day, the Saturday after Mother's Day. I stock the lake over at Sweetwater Creek State Park. I fill it up with fish. And we have the kids come out and we give them fishing poles and we teach them how to fish. Just like the Bible says, right? Teach a child to fish and they'll never go hungry. And so this year is the 20th of May. Come on out. Everything is free. Have a good time.
Okay, well, I'm gonna come. You're gonna have to teach me how to fish. I don't want to touch the fish, but I want to learn how to fish. And I'm gonna try to come this year, Roger. Again, I want to thank you guys for coming today and continue your support for our city. Again, Roger, I want to thank you. Camilla, I want to thank you for coming out. And you guys have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.